What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Submission Fishing Podcast. We're on episode 5. For those of you guys that don't know, that are new to this, this is the traditional episode 5, but I've got about, I think, 100 plus episodes on YouTube where I was doing a live show prior to this. So if you like this content, you can find it on YouTube. I had about 100 of these, probably 100 plus, but now we're doing the long form thing and just not doing it live anymore, doing recordings ever since I moved, just switching the time change. My name is Mike Muto. I'm the owner of Submission Fishing Company. I make slow pitch jigs. The show is not about slow pitch jigs, it's about everything. It's our goal just to get you guys a black belt in fishing. And I got a great guest with us today, and his name is Jeff from Battlefish. Is that correct?
Yep.
What's your last name?
Stahoviak.
Stahoviak. I know I asked you before, but I wasn't going to try it out the gate. So
Jeff at Battlefish is good.
Jeff at Battlefish. So I met Jeff basically since I moved here from California to Florida. I'm on the St. Johns River, and I've basically been binge watching a lot of his content. So Jeff, I know you've fished these waters for so long, and I found you, and then actually my fishing rep who I work with, he found you first. He was out here staying at my house, sleeping on like a little bed or whatever, and he was like, "Yeah, you got to check out this guy's channel. He's got a great." I think you got him on some tarpon because he went out and he caught some a couple months ago, and he turned me on to your channel, and I've been binge watching it, and I just sent you a random email. I was like, "Hey, you want to be on the podcast?" And you invited me out to like a Salt Strong event, and it was really good. Really good.
It's great.
So tell us a little bit about yourself for the audience.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm retired, so I tell the people the secret to being a successful fisherman is to fish every day. But the problem, obviously, is most people are only fishing weekends, maybe 2-3 times a month, and it's tough to. First of all, the fish change constantly. So I'm retired from Sunbelt Rentals. I was almost 34 years there as a safety training director. Did training for customers mostly and everything safety for construction equipment.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so scaffolding, aerial lifts, forklifts, and I have a little LLC company, consulting company as well that I do some side jobs with and expert witness work.
Nice.
So
nice.
Subject matter expert, they call it. So
man of many hats.
Yeah. So it's master of none. I retired 2 years ago? I forget now. But even before that, I got a boat. I had a kayak, a pedal kayak I bought from a guy, a native, a 10-foot pedal kayak, which was great. Yeah. Great little, and it's lightweight, so I could put it on top of the car and a pickup truck that I had. But I always wanted a boat. This is my third boat. I had a 15-foot whaler, then I had a 17-foot whaler that I renovated the entire boat. It was a 79 boat. Put a 70-horse Evinrude 4-stroke, which they call an Evinzuki because it's actually a Suzuki motor.
Interesting. I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, there was a 2001, so when the emissions changed on outboard motors, Evinrude partnered with Suzuki. Evinrude and Johnson partnered with Suzuki. So if you see a 4-stroke that has a Johnson label on it or an Evinrude label, it's actually a Suzuki engine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that.
I picked one up on eBay in a crate, brand new, for about $5,000, which was a super steal, and put it on the whaler, redid the dashboard, redid a bunch of stuff on the boat, and then sold it for half the money I had in it. Typical boat.
That's how it goes with boats, yeah. You never get out what you put in.
No, because I had a brand new trailer on it, bought a new trailer, and it's crazy. But it was a great boat, my daughter. But my daughters loved it. But the reason I sold it, and this is a funny story too, is my oldest daughter, she was involved in science projects, so a lot of weekends we're doing that. And then my younger daughter eventually was on 3 different soccer teams, and I had to sell the boat. I mean, it just wasn't using it because every weekend we were going on a Friday night, driving to Savannah, driving to Orlando, even had some tournaments in Atlanta. It was crazy. And when I was at Sunbelt, I used to talk to these young guys that would come to my classes, and they're hunting and fishing and everything, and they got new kids, and I'm going, you're going to be giving all that up. Oh, no, I'm not. I go, yeah, you will. It's going to take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And you go where your kids want to go, and soccer was a huge deal. They won a 3v3 national tournament at Disney at 9 years old. Yeah. And then my daughter's high school team won the state championship before the year she graduated in 2022. And so anyway, so that takes up a lot of time. So I sold that boat and eventually retired, and I went through an amicable divorce and was able to buy this boat off a guy who actually literally cried when I drove away. He was
he was attached to it, huh?
Yeah, it's a great boat, and he did a lot of by himself fishing, and he had grandkids, and his wife was bugging him to get a bigger boat so he could take the kids fishing and stuff, and it was pretty bare bones at the time. It had a manual Minn Kota trolling motor on it. It had a power pole. It had a 70 horse Yamaha. Had about 300 hours on it. I'm right at 1,000 hours now. That's how much I've used it.
Wow.
In 3 years? It'll be 3 years December. I've had it. Yeah, 3 years December. And it's made by a company called Dino out of Tampa, Florida, that was in business for a short period of time. And I think this, by the serial number, I think it's the 9th boat he built. I think they only built like 12 of them.
Oh, wow.
That I can figure out.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I did discover through some Google searches that it was in the Tampa Boat Show. My boat was in the Tampa Boat Show. It's sort of a copy of the Hughes lapside, the old Hughes 17-foot redfisher lapside. But it doesn't have the fit and finish of a Hughes or an Action Craft or anything like that. But it floats. It does great. And I love buying used boats because I don't have to worry about dinging them up.
Right. It's already
running into a dock or something, or having somebody run into you, or some goofy thing, or getting it sideways on the trailer or whatever.
Yeah,
so
that's true. It's a good perspective.
Yeah, and I do all my own repairs, all my own service. Reasonably mechanically inclined, but YouTube's a great help there too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the big problem with taking your boat someplace to have it serviced is not the cost, although that is an issue. It's the 2 or 3 months it takes them to do something, because all these boat places are so backed up.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And I did have an issue with my trim and tilt. I hired a mobile guy, come out and get the gland nut off. I could not get it off. It was a really big wrench he needed, and I had a wrench big enough, but I could not get it off. He heated it up and got it off for me. But other than that, I have pretty much do all myself. I rebuilt my trim and tilt, and it's been working great since. It was leaking. So again, thanks to YouTube, I was able to figure that out.
Able to get it done. So
yeah.
Were you fishing your whole life prior to retirement?
Yeah. So I actually have a picture. I did a self drawing presentation. I have a picture of me at about 2 years old with my hand on a 7.5-foot Fleet Twin Evinrude motor my dad had at my grandfather's place. My grandfather, when he retired, on my dad's side, he bought a cottage. We called it the cottage on the lake, on the Rock River in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, Black Hawk Island, and he rented aluminum boats and sold bait and cleaned fish and sold fuel and all that. So, since I was born, we were going out there, and then when I was probably 6, 7, 8 years old, probably 7 or 8 years old, I think. Ended up staying. I would stay out there 2, 3 weeks at a time in the summertime, and help my grandfather. My parents would, go back home and leave me out there. I had a younger brother, and he came out a few times too. So I helped unload guys' cars, load up the boat. We had these. It's just a funny story. These guys would come up from Decatur, Illinois. These preachers. One was a preacher. We called him the preacher. Black guys would come up from California, from Decatur, Illinois, to come fishing, and they're fishing catfish. So they'd come up during like a Friday afternoon, and I'd help. This is 1960. So it'd been 1962, 63. And
Back in the day.
yeah, so I'd help them unload their Cadillacs. They drove these big ass Cadillacs. I'd help them unload their tackle boxes, metal coolers into a 14-foot Alumacraft boat, and they put a motor on it, and they'd go out and fish all night and come back with, and I'm not kidding you, there was like 4 of these guys. They'd rent 2 boats, 2 in each boat, and they'd come back with coolers full of catfish. I mean, just
Did they go out with guides, or they just got on themselves? They knew how to fish,
yeah. Yeah, the Rock River dumped into the Lake Koshkonong, and it was a big, very shallow lake with a lot of walleye, northern catfish, crappie, bluegills, bass, you name it. It was in the river and lake. And
that's awesome.
Then my grandfather and I would spend the next day while they were sleeping, either in their car or my grandfather had a little room that he rented out. And we'd clean the catfish all day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For them and package them up and put them in the freezer.
That's awesome. And when did you start fishing the St. Johns River?
Really not. It's only been pretty much since I got the boat, so maybe 3 years.
Okay. So
it's not been long. So when I had my other boat, I fished St. Augustine a lot.
Oh, okay.
And had, mediocre luck there. Fishing shrimp, typical shrimp or mullet, a lot of live bait we use and stuff like that. But I decided that I really wanted to challenge myself with artificial, and since I got the boat and shrimp, the problem with shrimp, and you've seen this in my videos, why I hate using shrimp, is there's a catfish here called the hardhead catfish, and if you're throwing shrimp, you're going to catch hardhead catfish constantly. In my opinion, the most dangerous fish in the ocean.
Why is that?
They have 3 fins that stick out, 1 at the top and 2 on the side, and they are extremely sharp, pointed, and serrated, so that if they stick in your hand, you can't get them out.
Are poisonous at all, or no?
And it's semi-poisonous. Yeah, I went to the hospital with one.
Irritates.
Well, it was a sail cat that went through. I was fishing when I lived in. When I moved to Florida, I moved to Fort Myers, Florida, in '83. So I fished a lot, Sanibel Island, Boca Grande, all that area, Caloosahatchee River, snook, black drum, redfish, some tarpon, sharks, a lot of sharks. But I was wade fishing right at the Sanibel Causeway, which is a real popular place to wade fish, and I caught a sail cat, which is another type of catfish. Very good eating sail cat, very slimy. You'll know if you ever get a sail cat bite, your line will have this thick slime on it. I caught one. I'm in waist deep water, and it's, you got the rod, you're trying to manage the fish, and he flopped and stuck his side fin right through this webbing of my hand. Now, good thing it went all the way through. So I was able to break it off with my pliers, get the fish off, and I was able to bite on the piece that was coming through and
pull it
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my hand swelled up. Ended up going to the hospital, getting some shots, or I don't remember. That was a long time ago. But that's the sail cats and the hardhead catfish are a problem with shrimp. So and you catch all kinds of trash fish. If you want to catch a lot of fish, shrimp is the way to go. There's no question about it. Yeah. But that's not my thing anymore. I don't want to catch. Not that I don't want to catch a lot of fish. It's just that I want to catch fish that are worthy of a video.
Right.
Yeah.
And in a different way too. It's I don't use any bait, but also, I come from California, and it's like I've told this before. Like, bait's not really accessible. You can't throw nets.
Okay.
Nets are not allowed, so that really kind of eliminates. If you want to catch,
you could do sabiki rig.
If you want to catch bait, you got to use a sabiki. Yeah. But nobody's out there with a sabiki. But even that, it's like the only thing that's going to eat the sabiki are typically mackerel. Pretty decent sized mackerel.
Oh wow. And they'll break you off. They'll break the sabiki off.
If you get the small ones, you'd be okay. But like you can't. You're not going to get little pinfish. You're not going to get baitfish. They usually don't eat the sabiki. So getting bait isn't really you have to go to like a bait. What we have is called bait receivers, or bait barge is what we call them. You go up to a barge where they get it professionally delivered. Right. And then they put a scoop in your boat, or just 2 scoops, or they can even give you a kayak scoop. But if you're kind of a recreational guy, it's a lot of work to get bait out there. So a lot of Californians you have to learn to fish artificials because
Right.
you can't go out and get bait, and it's not going to be a quick thing.
Yeah.
Like, so most everybody just kind of resorts to fishing artificials. So.
Well,
I
that's the
definitely
challenge. The
understand
challenge here too is if you're going to use live bait is getting live bait. So one of my favorite places to go and get bait is at Goodby's Creek. There's a really good ramp there at Goodby's off of San Jose and Mandarin, and Goodby's Creek between the boat ramp and the river is usually, especially early in the morning, you throw a cast net 5 or 6 times, you'll get a live well full of a variety of fish, anything from tilapia to mullet to menhaden, pogies they call them here. You can get a cooler full there, and it depends on time of year too. One of the things I wish I would do, or I probably won't, is to keep a logbook. One of the speakers they had at the second to last Salt Strong meeting logs every day he fishes. He logs in a notebook tides, moon, all that stuff, and then the fish he caught, the bait he was using, and stuff like that. I'm trying, in my mind at least, I can't seem to figure out a pattern to bait and stuff like that. So that's one thing I think if you kept a logbook, it would be helpful to keep, see if there's any kind of pattern to things. But I wonder if the patterns are being, disrupted by, well, they get disrupted by, hurricanes, a lot of rain.
Rain, yeah.
Yeah, really high northeaster that blows, really high tides in. So I think that screws things up. For us, not the fish. The fish don't care, but right. They're not in the areas they usually will be. And I have a theory too about fishing: is if you're not in saltwater fishing, specifically in brackish water like the St. Johns River, if you're not catching fish, you just haven't found them. Especially redfish. Redfish eat, and this is kind of a controversial statement, I think. They eat anything, and they eat all the time. So if you're not catching redfish, you just aren't finding them.
Right.
And one of the challenges also that I talk about in my last video I posted last night is the clarity of the water in the St. Johns River. It's really dirty. So, what attracts the fish? Is it the vibration of the lure? Is it the rattle? You got to have something that attracts it. And like the video I posted last night, one of the things I think works for tarpon is these type of swim baits that
you were telling me about those, right?
The tail flaps.
At the meeting, what's the one?
Yeah, and I think the vibration of the tail, the fish pick it up with their lateral line. Now all these fish have a lateral line that runs down the side of their body. That's their ears, and that's how they hear.
Yeah, I saw that on your Salt Strong presentation that you did, and what was cool about that is I did a whole show on lateral lines.
Yeah,
and I think that is the most people don't understand that. I think the lateral line is everything.
It is everything.
It's
just
their sixth sense. That's how fish.
Yeah, it's just like your ears. So if like you have workers in here, and if they're in the kitchen and they hit their hammer on something, I can immediately look and see. My ears know what direction, and then that's how the lateral line works on the fish. They know exactly where stuff is by a noise or whatever. These swim baits, amazingly enough, it's a pretty fast retrieve with these. Medium fast retrieve, and it keeps the bait about 1 foot to 2 feet below the surface. And with visibility, not sunlight, but visibility of 18 to 20 inches of visibility because of the cloudy water. This bait tracking, 2 feet below the surface, the sun is going to pick up on it. So they're going to be able to key in up. But if I can't see 2 feet in the river, I don't think the fish can either.
Right.
So they've got to depend on something, which is a rattle or a vibration, to pick up on that bait.
100%.
And if you watch the video I just posted last night, some of the slow motion, this is the stuff that gets me so excited when I get home and you know this about when you actually edit the video and you do the slow mo and all that stuff. Stuff you didn't see because it's so fast.
Right.
And you now see the head wake. So the head wake, the fish is 1 foot or 18 inches below the surface, right, coming at the lure, and then then he follows it literally. You can see from last night's video, literally at the boat. That's one thing I tell people is keep the bait in the water all the way to the tip of your rod, because you don't know what's going to hit. I've had so many tarpon and trout hit right at the boat.
Yeah. And you see them, the followers, you know, when you're bringing it in, and sometimes you get it to the boat and then they swim away when they see the boat.
Right. Or they make a stab on it and miss it and then leave. So, that's really the exciting part of going back and watching the videos. Like I said in the video last night, I do these videos just purely for myself, especially the tarpon ones. Now that I've got the GoPros and I'm shooting at 120 frames per second, the slow-mo is just so beautiful on the strikes and the jumps. And it's still, you know, people say, I catch 1 out of 20 fish, maybe.
On the tarpon?
Yeah. But I don't really care. That if I get 4 or 5 jumps out of that fish close up to the boat, that's my day. My day is done.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm happy. You know, so it's going back to artificial versus live. You know, when I started fishing tarpon in the St. Johns River 3 years ago when I got the boat, I would leave a mullet out the back of the boat, 1 or 2, single person with 2 live baits out of the back of the boat is freaking nuts, because you get lines tangled up and you know, all kinds of problems. But this year I did that too. I would have, recently over here in Middle Cove, I would have 1 on a float, maybe 5 or 6 feet down, with a small split shot on it, and some sort of live bait. I was using silver trout, yellowmouth, weak fish, all the same. There's no limit or size limit on those, so if you catch them small, they're easy to catch. And you catch them on paddle tails and stuff, and put them out, and 1 on a float, and then 1 with a couple of split shots on it down. So 1 up, 1 down. And you know, during the summer months, you're getting tarpon. This fall, I got 2 nice 42-inch redfish on that. One 42-inch redfish ate a 18-inch ladyfish. Which,
oh really? That you had baited up?
Yeah, I put the 18-inch ladyfish out because I thought there should be tarpon around, right? Because ladyfish is a great tarpon bait. And what I really believe happened probably is there were sharks around too. There's sharks in Mill Cove too, bull sharks. And this has happened before where I've had a hit and I reel up the line and there's just the head of the ladyfish on the hook, and I truly believe, I don't think the redfish ate that whole ladyfish. I think a shark maybe took part of it. I didn't notice it, right? And then the redfish took the rest.
To clean up.
Yeah, it came to clean up. So I have 1 high, 1 low, maybe to avoid entanglement. If I get a fish on, I try to reel up the other one. I'm using circle hooks, so you don't have to worry. Actually, the guides will tell you. I've watched a lot of videos of guides that says this is great for amateur fishermen, because
you have to set it.
You don't have to set it. Yeah, and if you set the drag right, you have to set the drag just so enough that hook sets, but you can still get the rod out of the rod holder. Because you have it too tight, it's really hard to get the rod out of the rod holder.
Yeah, I love circle hooks.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about setting a hook or anything, and you can actually tarpon. You can reel up the other reel while the other rod's still in the rod holder, and then they wear themselves out jumping like crazy. There's one video I shot where I did that, where I didn't let him go, but I was reeling up the other line while he was running with, that's why I have 300 yards of line on my reels, because I figure I'm going to let him go. And they kind of wear themselves out, they do 4 or 5 jumps and they're pretty worn out by that point. The circle hooks, I don't think I lost 1 fish on a circle hook, which is a video that was this summer, where I used a lighter weight one because the bait was small.
Right.
And it didn't straighten the hook, but it bent the hook enough so he got off.
Right.
So I don't know if you noticed I put this little mono on here. There's when you're using menhaden, which is what a menhaden looks like, a pogie, I call it, we call it white bait. Pogies, thread fins, greenies. It's a very narrow, thin bait. And when you use a circle hook, one of the problems with it is when you hook them either through the lip or through the eye, is the bait, if it's swimming around a lot, will actually turn the hook and hook itself. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Show us up in the
Yeah,
camera there.
so if you hook them through the eye or even through the lip, the bait will swim around, and the hook will actually turn and hook into itself, back into the fish, and the fish is kind of wobbling sideways. So what you do, and I learned this from a tarpon fisherman, is you just tie a little piece of mono on there, and when you put the bait on, it can't go past there. So you can kind of adjust that up or down. And when you hook the bait
So it's
on,
just like a little knotted piece of mono.
yeah, just a little
interesting.
knotted piece of mono, and that keeps the hook from turning onto and hooking into the gill or side of the bait fish. But that was a really good tip I learned from watching a podcast on tarpon fishing.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I mean,
Yeah.
I know at California, for example, we get a lot of California viewers. We use a lot of circle hooks for when they're going out tuna fishing.
Tuna fishing,
and
right,
they fly line
Yeah.
live bait, but
Yeah.
and it's almost
And they're probably using
Primarily
a
circle
bait
hooks,
that's really thin, a very thin type live
usually
bait.
anchovies or sardines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is perfect for that.
Yeah.
This is perfect for that. And it's just a little piece of mono scrap that
Interesting.
you tie on there with any kind of knot, just so you have something there that keeps the hook from turning onto that and hooking onto the gill.
It's a great
of
tip.
the
We'll have
bait.
to
Yeah.
get some of those guys to try it out there for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to learn to use artificial, and I fish I shop everywhere, but my main place I buy most of my stuff at is Resellers Reef. But we have an Academy Sports near, and I picked these up, these crazy croakers, and it looks like a real croaker. And I know croakers are a great bait for a lot of things, and they have a whole line of swim baits like this. I call them segmented swim baits. There's fabric in there. It's Kevlar,
Right.
held together by Kevlar, and has a real good swimming action. And they have a whole line. They've got a lot of, besides the crazy croaker, they've got shads, all different kinds of shads, and I've caught redfish on all the different types of baits. But a common thing in fishing, you've heard fishermen say, is if you could only use one bait the rest of your life,
Right.
what would that be? And it would be the crazy croaker,
That'd be the one.
hands down. And you love paddle tails and stuff, and I think you catch a lot of fish on paddle tails. But one thing about the crazy croaker is the smallest redfish I've ever caught on this is 18 inches.
Wow.
It doesn't catch small fish because I believe
I think it's the size of the
it's
bait.
because of the size. It's 4 inches. Yeah,
So
it's a
you're
pretty
eliminating
big
the
bait.
small ones.
Yeah, and the tarpon cannot resist it. It's crazy.
Are you fishing like super shallow for like the redfish, or is that seasonal thing? So I'm kind of new to the area, new learning fishing, and the only time I've been redfish fishing, I've gone out with like guides and stuff, and we've gone like where they take the pole and they're pushing their boat. We're like
Right, super
less
shallow.
than a foot of water.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In
Is
the
that
same
where
size-
you're going, or are you
Yeah, oh
fishing a
yeah,
little deeper?
absolutely. So one of the places I fish just south of Doctors Lake Inlet on St. Johns River is an area called Moccasin Slough, and it's super shallow there. Boaters call it Pineapple Point. It's raggedy. It's actually physically Raggedy Point, but it's super shallow there, and there's a lot of structure in the water. A lot of logs, a lot of trees, a lot of branches, a lot of stuff in the water, and a lot of shells. So there's a lot of, and the shell, if you can get clear enough water that you can see clamshells in the bottom, that's a good indication because the clamshells hide these small little crabs and things that the redfish
interesting.
eat. Yeah, so when I clean any fish, I learned this from my grandfather, we open up the stomach to see what they're eating, right? And the redfish will have these little black crabs in them a lot. And, that's what they're feeding on around these clam beds and tree branches and logs and stuff that are around there. So yeah, that's sometimes less than a foot of water. If you watch my frustrating tarpon video where I'm getting the head wakes and no bites on these juvenile tarpon, we just cannot figure out how to catch those things. They would follow the bait up and stuff, but that water was 18 inches, a foot deep.
Nice.
Yeah, so, and pretty clear with those days, the water was pretty clear. And it might have been another issue with when the water gets clear, I'm not sure some of these baits work as well. I don't know, it's all theory.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely I think a thing that is true. From my experience, like when the water's, I don't know here, but it doesn't get like crystal clear water like
Right.
in California, the bays. Sometimes that water is like, you could see the bottom at like 40 feet deep.
Yeah, right.
And that's typically, you're going to have a rough day fishing. When they can see, when they know what they're looking at, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Because they know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think the dirtier water,
helps.
it does help for sure.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
we go back to they're using senses,
Right.
not their eyes.
Right.
And they're just using a predatory, instinctual bite.
Something's in there.
When they see everything that's going on, when they can see it and feel it, you're going to have a rough day because it's harder to get them to bite here.
I have 3 aquariums as well, and I've got one aquarium that's these tilapia. I catch fish in a local pond near my house, and I got one that's full of tilapia, and then I've got one I had a bass, but I had to get rid of him because he would eat anything that went in a tank. I got a couple bluegills in that, and a bunch of what's called sleeper gobies that I caught.
He's like in your house, like big aquarium.
Yeah, big,
okay.
Yeah. So I feed
You had
fish
a bass in there.
So I think fish react to eating. Their main objective is to eat something, but they're also, especially bass, I feel, anything that comes into their territory, they're going to attack. And I'm not sure it's an eating preference. I think it's something in their territory. They're pissed off, and the snook are like that too. I know snook. I fished a lot of snook down in Fort Myers, and
territorial.
Very territorial, and something comes into their area and they attack it. I'm sure it has to do somewhat with eating something, but I think it's more of something's in their area and they don't want it there. Snook fishing in Fort Myers was a blast. My dad and my mom lived at Punta Rassa, which is, if you're going down to Sanibel Island, you go through the toll booth. Punta Rassa is right on the right-hand side. There's a boat ramp there, Pier 50 Marina. My dad kept his boat there. He had a 20-foot Grady White. He kept his boat there in the rack, and we'd go out fishing. But we would fish right off those rocks there and catch snook, with little we were using stuff we used up north for salmon, little Cleos. But one of my favorite lures for snook, believe it or not, was a barracuda lure. So the green particularly, the bright green tube lure, the treble hook on it. And my first house I lived at, I was maybe a quarter mile from a marina, Pepper Tree Point Marina, and had a T-shaped pier that went out in the Caloosahatchee River. And I could go out there, and a friend of mine was the marina guy there, and he would let me. It's a private marina, but he'd let me on the dock, and I could go out there in the T-shaped dock, and again, like a foot of water, tide running, which doesn't matter what direction it was running, but the fish would face into the tide. I'm sitting underneath the dock. It was a lighted dock too, so right at sundown, and as it was getting dark. And I had a pier net, and I could go down there and I could cast down the dock from the T part of the dock and reel as fast as I could. I mean, you cannot reel too fast.
You still get smoked.
Oh my God, they would come out from that dock and nail that tube lure. And I remember one night particularly, I went out there and there was a bunch of people out there watching the sunset. And maybe 5 or 6 people, older people, because it was a kind of a retirement community, like everything in Fort Myers. And I said, I came out kind of cocky, and I said, yeah, my wife said to get dinner. And they all kind of laughed, and I made 3 casts. I got a 10-pound snook in the net. The guy helped me land it, and I went home with a 10-pound snook.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. They're some of the. That was back when there was no limit on them. You could catch whatever you wanted and no size limit on them at all. And but that's snook, cobia, grouper, probably the 3 best eating fish in Florida.
I haven't had the other 2. I've had grouper.
Cobia is incredible.
Snook. Maybe I've had cobia. I don't think so though.
Yeah, cobia is really good. And we used to catch cobia right at the Sanibel Bridge there.
Do cobia come in the river here?
No, you'll catch
like
them. You got to go out in the Atlantic, and you got to look for a little cooler temperature change in the summertime. They hang under manta rays, and you'll see manta rays out in the Atlantic once in a while. I've seen them a few times, and they'll hang under manta rays. They look, and I don't know if they're related, but they look like a remora.
Yeah,
a big remora.
Right.
And like remoras, they hang around shelter.
Yeah.
So large rays and things like that.
For people that don't know, the remora is the fish that sucks on
exactly.
rays and sharks and things like that.
That one,
their head looks like a shoe, like the bottom of a shoe, and they suck onto the.
Yeah, the last redfish video I posted where I caught the 40-inch redfish, 42-inch redfish. There was a remora on him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
It was sucking them, and I actually picked it off and threw it in the water. I'll take pictures and stuff. So,
because when you did your seminar too, there was something interesting. And I know you had talked about it earlier. How the fish only do 3 things, right? And what are those 3 things? And
swim, breed, and eat. That's it.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting. Even some experienced guides will say things like, I heard a tarpon guide say this. I don't think a tarpon thinks a bait just falls out of the air. First of all, if you use think with a fish, it's just that this isn't.
Yeah.
So if you watch not Deadliest Catch, but the tuna guys.
Wicked Tuna.
Wicked Tuna, yeah. That one of the episodes, I think it was Wicked Tuna. One of the episodes they had a marine biologist woman on the boat, and they had just caught like a 600 or 700 pound tuna. And they were and these guys talk about these fish thinking and doing things like, thinking like a human being and stuff. And the lady said, their brain is the size of a marble.
Right.
So they're not thinking.
Yeah.
They're reacting. Yeah. And so swim, breed, and eat. That's all they do, and that's all that's in their head.
I totally agree with that. Because I've talked about that too. Is that we try to romanticize it and we overanalyze it, and one of the problem I think we make as fishermen is we start thinking like we're the fish, or we start thinking
we're projecting.
We start thinking fish think like us.
Yeah.
And they don't. So we start getting in our own heads, and I like how you made that point because it really simplifies what fishing is, and we tend to overcomplicate. Like sometimes I see these baits and people go, "Oh, fish aren't going to eat that. Fish aren't going to eat that," but fish isn't us. We see it and we're like, well, obviously that's not a bait. We wouldn't eat that. Yeah. Obviously it doesn't look real, but like you said, we don't have a brain the size of a BB or a marble, and they're predatory and they're instinctual, and we overcomplicate it. And I just thought that was a great point.
It's funny you say that, because when I first met Sonia and took her fishing, I was using these. One of my favorite baits was a little $2.50 Walmart bomber, green and silver lip, suspended or floating bait, and she'd say, "Oh, nothing's going to bite that," and I'd catch fish on it all the time. I used to call it a fish finder, because if nothing was biting, I could find fish with that lure and get hookups. I think we as human beings project too much onto the fish. There's they definitely school for some reason. I don't know why. And I tried to get a hold of a professor at University of Virginia one time. I wrote to her a couple times and never got an answer. But her specialty was studying fish, and especially redfish and stuff. And so 2 years ago, if you go back to my videos, we had 4 days in front of Moose Haven and the St. Johns River in a foot of water, where you could just sit there, and it was like almost clockwork. You could sit there and we were fishing, and all of a sudden I had a dead bait hanging out the back of the boat, and we were both casting, and all of a sudden we had 3 redfish on.
Wow.
And if you watch my video, I'm looking, oh my God, there's hundreds of redfish swimming around here, and we're in less than 2 feet of water. And you'd have maybe a minute or two, and they'd be gone.
That's
right?
It. Yeah.
And then an hour later, they'd come back. And I didn't see any, now, not that they weren't there, but I didn't see any bait in the water. What were they doing? Why? And these were high slot 27 to 33-inch fish. And
just hunting.
All you had to do is throw, heck, you could probably throw an empty hook in the water and they'd bite it.
Right.
They were going crazy.
Just hungry.
Yeah.
Probably just looking. Yeah.
Yeah.
The hungriest fish.
For 4 days, and so the first video I made is once in a lifetime. These fish come in, we triple hook up, da 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 da. So the next day we went back, same thing. So it was the second lifetime type fishing. 4 days in a row we went back to that spot, and since then I've gone back to that spot so many times. And I have caught redfish there, but none in a school,
that same
none like that. And then, the end of the video I posted yesterday, that was 2 years ago in the St. Johns River. And Sonia and I were out on a Sunday. It was a terrible day. It was windy. We went on to Goodby's Creek. It was windy, wet, raining. We had raincoats on. It was October. It was nasty out, nasty for Florida. And we weren't catching anything. We went to Beauclair Bluffs, which is my favorite places, right before Plumber's Cove and Buckman Bridge there. That's the other thing I do in my videos. I tell people where I am, and that kind of aggravates some. That has aggravated a couple fishermen who have fished all their lives on the St. Johns River and given up these spots.
Yeah.
But
they
anyway,
nobody else knows about it, right?
Yeah, right.
Except them.
So we weren't catching anything, and I noticed a bunch of birds diving out and towards the middle of the St. Johns River. Birds were diving, and I thought, oh, jacks, this will be fun. Let's get some jacks, right? So we scooted out there, and we caught 2 redfish, and they were redfish schooling, and they were pushing shrimp up to the surface. So I went the next day, and that was the video at the end of the video I posted yesterday, at the end, where it's perfectly calm, it's perfectly dead calm, and you can see the birds diving. And I thought they were bait fish until one of the seagulls flew over my head, and I could see he had a shrimp hanging out of his mouth. And
wow.
So the schooling redfish were, in one of my videos, which I didn't put that clip in, but one of my videos, I just landed one, let them go, and I was going to recast again, and I noticed from here to where your child seat is sitting here, a swirl, and I just tossed the bait over there and hooked a redfish. So they were literally underneath my boat. So that was 2 years ago, but this year I didn't see them, and I looked all over that area from what's called Epping Forest Yacht Club, Goodby's Creek, Bowles School, the NAS Navy Air Station's on the other side, all the way to the Buckman Bridge. I cruised all that a lot this October and didn't see any of that. And there's a lot of shrimp in the river. So that's another thing. It's like, why did the redfish not come back and go after those shrimp again this year? And when I was doing that, several of my viewers went out and did the same thing and were chasing those schools of redfish. And you had to just kind of sit in the middle of the river and look for birds, or just kind of cruise around listening for, you hear them a lot of times first, the squawking, and look for birds that are diving. And if you can get up to them and you got a trolling motor that can push your boat at a reasonable speed, man, they move fast though. And I have chased quite a few, but I could not catch up with them. Even with the trolling motor going almost 3 miles an hour, I could not catch up with the.
They're gone.
With the fish, yeah.
That's crazy. So how often? How many days a week do you think you fish?
Well, recently I have not been out a lot. I had blew a tire on my trailer, but during the summertime I go 4 or 5 days a week, 5-6 days a week. I hate weekends because
everybody's out.
Well, it's the wakes. I'm 69 years old, and sitting up in that chair where I am, I've got if you notice my boat, I have a platform, and then I have my seat up pretty high, and you sit there and rock all day with those waves. It's exhausting. It's like riding a horse, So it's the wakes on the weekends that drive me crazy. Even I curse the 4-day work week now because people are taking off freaking Fridays, and Fridays are like a Saturday now, which is aggravating to a person like me.
So one thing I wanted to touch on, so you fish a lot, and something you alluded to earlier. We've all familiar with the 90-10 theory, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious I want to know for you personally, how quickly do you move spot to spot? How many casts do you make? Because you say if the fish, like the redfish eat all the time, or fish eat all the time, right? That's what they do. They eat, sleep, and they mate. Yeah. Like how many, and this goes, I think this is universal. It's not just a St. John's River thing. It goes for all fishing. Yeah. But when you go to a spot, how long do you fish it before you move on? Do you give it an hour, 30 minutes, or are you just moving until you find them? And when you find them, do you stay?
Okay, so yeah, I have a theory about that too. Because I'm retired, I can spend a whole day in one spot. And I really try to force myself to do that. And I don't want to be what I call a star fisherman, where you go here, 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 and it forms a star when you
right. Your
put it on a map, right?
Like,
yeah, that's to me. And if you what's deceiving about fishing videos, especially mine, is that you don't see the hours of not catching anything, right? 100%. I'm not posting a video of not catching anything, right?
Of course.
So I can tell you that between Moccasin Slough and Beauclair Bluffs, I've literally spent hours fishing there, and we'll get one tarpon on, or hours fishing there. Towards the end of the video I posted last night, where I did the slow-mo of all the schooling redfish that just scattered when I was bringing that 33-inch one in. I was there, that was like 11 o'clock, and I was out there at 6 o'clock in the morning, right?
Right.
And I just happened to see, and this is something really, this is what the advantage of fishing every day too, is training your eye and your ears, but your eyes particularly, to notice disturbances on the water.
Yeah. And
not a wake from a boat, not a wind breeze or something like that. What is a fish versus a breeze of wind or a wake of a boat or a rogue wave or whatever? And I just happened to notice out by the no wake sign something weird. So I kind of headed over there and I casted, like I said in the video, I was using the NLBN, the big mullet. And it was a big school of redfish. And my one big tip about if you find a school of redfish like that and you're fishing with a buddy, get your buddy to throw near where your fish is fighting, because those fish are just like chickens. We have chickens. So one thing you do is you can go out there and feed them bread, right? So if you throw if you got 20 chickens and you throw one piece of bread out there, a chicken's going to get it, and all the other chickens are going to chase him and try to get it out of his mouth. The fish do exactly the same thing. The redfish will chase the other fish with the bait hanging out of the redfish's mouth. They're going after that bait, trying to get it out of their mouth.
The mahi-mahi do that too.
Yeah. And if you get your buddy to throw near them, you can double hook
take
up.
The advantage
right. So your buddy oftentimes is getting the landing net. No, don't get the landing net.
Right.
Throw near where you're fighting the other fish. And
so, that's interesting. So
I'll fish. I will try.
So you pick a spot, and then you like to pick a spot a day before, and you'll sit there kind of all day and work it. Interesting.
Yeah, I look at tides. I look at wind. Wind is a big factor for me. I try to stay out of the wind, and I look at tides. Outgoing seems to be a little bit better. Again, anecdotal evidence. I've caught fish every tide, but.
You think there's one tide that's better than the other? Or
it seems like outgoing is better and low tide is better. And it's just logical because it seems to concentrate the water more, I guess. Or visibility is better in shallow water, too, because the sunlight can get to the bottom. So maybe they're picking up bait better that way.
It is something I've noticed, too. Like, I've only been out here twice, actually, in my kayak. I've been so busy getting the house together. And I think the few catches I've had were on outgoing tide, I noticed as well. That's interesting.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I like fishing the Mill Cove area is the tide doesn't run really fast, so you don't have to use a lot of heavy weight. A lot of the guys who fish the bull reds in the river, you have to use 8-10 ounces of weight to get down with heavy rods and stuff. And that doesn't appeal to me. And actually fishing live bait doesn't appeal to me either, per se. I like the excitement of catching something on an artificial bait, you're kind of fooling them with.
I have to get you some of my jigs.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what they're for. Like, so if you need the heavy ounces, you work the slow pitch jig, and it's an artificial, but
Yeah.
you can get down to those deep zones. You know, it's not a plastic. It's interesting.
Yeah, one thing I have discovered, and I'm pretty sure about this, is whether you're using a live target or you're using the, I'm going to leave these for you too here. When you're using a live target like this or the crazy croaker is, if you notice that hook points at the eye,
Right.
it does not, you can hook a fish, but somehow if he changes direction, I've had this thing come out.
Oh, interesting.
And I've noticed that if I bend this hook straight, if I open the hook up,
That's what you were saying earlier.
yeah, and make it kind of parallel with the belly, and the same thing with this, open that hook up a little bit and make it more parallel with the belly, I find my hookup's a little bit better.
Huh.
The other thing to watch on all hooks is a common thing that happens, and I notice this on my jigs too with my paddle tails. And I wear, I've got short arm disease. You know, the old person can't see it, so I wear contacts. However, I wear sunglasses with 2.5 times bifocals in them, so it's like a magnifying glass, which is
Right.
great. And I recommend that for anybody who's fishing, no matter how good your eyesight is, because when you're looking at the tip of this hook, the sharper the hook is, the better chance that tip has a chance to curl up. And I have noticed many of my baits, when I look at it normally, I don't see it, but when I look under my 2.5 magnifying bifocals and my sunglasses, that tip of that hook is curled.
Interesting.
And
It's such a fine point.
I know, it's really hard to see, and I have a file on my boat, and I just kind of trim it up a little bit. I learned this from watching muskie fishermen. I love muskie fishing too. When I was up in Wisconsin, I used to live in Wisconsin, did muskie fishing. They're fanatical with sharp hooks. I mean, they're just nuts about sharp hooks, right? And I kind of learned that about them. And you just need to dress that tip of that hook up and get that bend out of the tip. But the bifocals really help look at that, and you'll see that in jigs. So if you're fishing around oyster beds, you are constantly going to have that curl on the tip of your hook, because you're constantly snagging the oyster beds.
100%.
So you've got to watch that. So the bifocals, again, normal eyesight, I don't see it, but you go on the 2.5 or 2 times bifocal, and you'll see that little bit of curl on there, and that's enough so that it just doesn't bite enough to get a hook on there. So
That's a good tip.
yeah, I've tried.
I haven't really done, but I know people do carry like a little file with them, and it's probably not a bad idea. It's something I haven't done, but
Yeah.
it makes you wonder how many fish you've lost because of it.
Yeah, and
It's like one of those
it's
small
just
things.
about
simple.
dressing up the tip of
Yeah.
the hook. Yeah, and I try to put. And then again, I learned this from the muskie guys. I try to put like a chisel. So I take, if this is the tip of the hook, I do like this and try to get a kind of a knife point on the top part of that hook and a point on the tip of the hook. So this is kind of like an arrow in hunting would be. It would have a knife point on it. Instead of having the hook rounded,
Right.
actually putting a kind of a chisel point on it.
Right.
And that seems to work a little bit better as well. But constantly looking at your hooks, especially after a fish, after a snag, after hitting an oyster bed, is something you really got to do to check that hook tip. So yeah, paddle tails. I was using before I discovered the crazy croaker or the swim baits at all. I was using a lot of paddle tails, DOA. The green with the green, kind of a darker green with the green, bright green chartreuse tail, or white with a chartreuse tail. Going back to what fish think,
Right.
What the heck does that look like? I guess it looks like a shrimp, or it looks like something, And I find that jerking it, slow retrieve. My daughter, she caught on a bass assassin paddle tail. Well, on a regular DOA paddle tail, when I took her out on Father's Day, she caught her, at that time, 33-inch redfish, her biggest redfish. And then I took her out later that month, I think it was July. And it's so funny, we were seeing, in that video, you'll see that my side scan, literally hundreds of
I saw that
redfish in the
picture,
bottom.
yeah,
Oh
was
yeah, it
crazy.
was crazy.
Man, that was wild.
And you'll see in the video, typical. Well, she's 22. She just got into law school at UF, so I'm very proud of her. She's doing great. And I'll be seeing her this afternoon, and she just got back from school. So anyway, we were watching the side scan, and she wouldn't even cast. She was on her phone. I said, "Oh, there's some fish." So she would cast, and she cast the bass assassin, which is a longer paddle tail. Same thing, kind of moss green and then a bright green tail. And I use the tsunami jigs because they're cheap at Walmart. They're like $2.50 for like 6 of them. And they're called a boxing glove head, which is
Oh, interesting. Like
yeah, it's called a
rounded.
boxing glove head. So it looks like a boxing glove with little black eyes on it, green. Anyway, so, if you watch on the video, she's not even paying attention. She throws the line out there, and all of a sudden, she's hooked up. So, I mean, the thing wasn't even moving, I think. It was just probably falling, which is a lot of, you'll see this, bass fishermen will talk about this, the fall.
Yes, 100%.
A lot of fish pick up on the fall.
Yes.
So that the jerk, the fall, the jerk, the fall.
Yep.
And I think that's what happened. And it was right near a dock. That's the other thing. I catch very few of my fish near a dock. Almost all of them are well away from a dock. And guys, and I still fish. I fish docks constantly. I throw at docks all the time.
You just don't have a lot of success with it.
But majority of fish I catch are well away from the docks.
Interesting.
And
You just looking for them like a...
no, I'm just blind casting. And I know this. I know the fish are supposed to be hanging around structure. That's always the thing. But I've just had most of my luck. I can pretty much tell you 3, maybe 4 of all the hundreds of redfish I've caught were within 3 feet of a dock. Every other fish has been way away from a dock.
Interesting. That's a good... I like that philosophy. Like you have a different version of a lot of the norms, that we adhere to. Like one of the things you always hear is finding the structure.
Structure, right.
Is like a golden rule. And
I think that's important. But you can't throw
you've
out everything else.
Success. But you've had success
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
away from structure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's valuable information,
Yeah, and the tarpon is weird too, because in Mill Cove here, there's and I can't emphasize this enough. Number one, have a GPS guided trolling motor is really, really key.
Yes.
Having a power pole of some sort, the power pole or the Minn Kota Talon or whatever you got, that's fine. Some sort of way to anchor very quickly is in shallow water is a very, very good thing to have. And having a good map system on your GPS of the water that you're fishing in. So, and it's not so much, the reason I went to Mill Cove was I heard about it. It's a funny story. We put in at Ortega River, Fishing Creek, boat ramp on a Sunday in the summer. I forget what, it was August. I think it was August. Anyway, we started fishing Avondale area, St. Johns River, which is very successful there, very successful area, Ortega River, Avondale. And we ended up going downtown. The tide runs too, because the river narrows in downtown, the tide runs really fast there, and it's really hard to fish there with any kind of success because you got to use a lot of weight. So we went through downtown, and we headed all the way north underneath the Matthews Bridge and the Hart Bridge and the Matthews Bridge, or the Matthews and the Hart, whatever. And ended up, and I was looking at my Google Maps too to see where boat ramps were, and that's where I discovered the Lions boat ramp. And we went into, I said, we're close to Mill Cove, let's go over there. Goat Island is right there, they call it, and then across the river is the Trout River. So we went into Mill Cove, and I'm looking at my map, and there's a deep channel in the middle of Mill Cove, and it's 12, 14 feet deep, depending on the tide. All the fishermen, ever since I fished there, I've only run into a couple of guys who watch my videos who fish where I was fishing for tarpon.
Oh, interesting.
Everybody else fishes the shorelines, which is fine. That's fine. You're going to catch all kinds of stuff along the shorelines. There's 3 or 4 different islands there on one side, and the big spoil island, which I guess they ship dirt out and sand and stuff. But anyway, so you can be kind of between these 2 islands, out of the main track of the main shipping channel of the St. Johns River. This is off the main shipping channel. So there's a channel that runs right through there. So I find a lot of fish are sitting, especially those silver trout, yellowmouths are sitting right in the middle of that 14 feet of water. They're down deep, and that's where you can catch them with. And those are really good eating. You can catch, we took, I don't know, 15 of them home the other day. And they're small, but we scale them, and Sonia fries them up, and we, eat them with the bones in and everything. So anyway, that channel seems to be like a little highway that runs through there underneath the Dame Point Bridge. When I discovered tarpon there, I saw them rolling, and I thought, wow, there's tarpon here. And that's when we started catching our first tarpon in that area. They're all range, like I said in the video, from 30 to 100 pounds, which are the most fun ones to catch. The one, if you go back a couple years, I fought one in the St. Johns River that had to be over 150 pounds. It was, I spent an hour and 15 minutes with 65-pound test braid, hour and 15 minutes before he wore through he must have had the hook in his mouth because he wore through the 60-pound mono.
Oh, wow.
Frayed it through.
Yeah.
And no jumps. When a tarpon doesn't jump, you got a big one on. That's a problem. And hour and 15 minutes, he finally wore through. I had him up to the boat several times. The tarpon seemed to sit in that, especially the drop-off. The drop-off's pretty dramatic. So you can actually sit right in the middle of that 14 feet, and you can cast to 5 feet of water each side.
Oh, interesting.
But it's a pretty dramatic drop-off.
Right.
And the tarpon will be in the shallower water as well. I've seen them in the shallower water many times, but they seem to stay in that channel. And a few of my viewers I've met out there who were jumping tarpon were kind of hanging in that channel as well. The artificial has been obviously the most fun.
Yeah.
I get to, going back to your question about working an area, I want to work an area so I discover how shallow it is, whether my boat can go in there. My boat can go anywhere, so whether the trolling motor can push my boat in there or not. I carry a push pole with me to get me out of trouble. That's the only reason I use it.
You're not using it to get in?
No, I'm using it if I get stuck on something or get stuck in the weeds or wind blows me into the grass or whatever, I can get out. And I have used it in the softer mud to anchor the front of my boat as well. But now I use the trolling motor or the power pole. I will work an area to discover what the terrain is in that area and what the docks look like and what kind of bait fish might be there and stuff like that. And then my friend Jason and Alex, they'll come out once in a while, especially on weekends, and fly a drone over, and we will see the fish in the drone. That's the other thing about the redfish. The few drone shots they've got, the redfish are just scattered. They're all over the place. They're not, and they're just swimming around.
Concentrated.
They're not.
So they're almost like pelagic, right?
They're looking. I guess they're just hunting and swimming around. They're not sitting under a dock.
They don't have a house. I mean, they don't stay there.
Well, that was one of the arguments I got into with one of my fans who said I was giving up spots, and they were going to get fished out. And
they don't live there, right?
I don't believe fish live in a particular place. I think you will, and if you only fish weekends, you may get into that trap of thinking they do live in a certain spot. But when you fish every day, I can tell you, Beauclair Bluff, Plumber Cove, I went one day, I caught 5 or 6 18, 19, 20-inch redfish in one particular spot over 2 hours. Okay, I went back the next day, same weather conditions, same tides, nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And even another friend of mine, Patrick, who comes and fishes a certain dock all the time, he'll catch a few fish there one day, and then he'll come back the next day and nothing. I don't like to move around a lot. I do have certain spots I do go to if I'm not catching anything at one spot, but I like to learn a particular area. And I don't write off really any areas.
Yeah.
Doctor's Lake has been great in the summertime, early summer. But as the water heats up and gets to be 90 degrees in Doctor's Lake and the algae blooms come in, it's been, spotty to say the least. And the other problem, one of the things I talk about in the video from last night is I have had a lot of fans write to me and say, I saw tarpon rolling. And I truly believe, I know they want to be helpful, but I think they're seeing garfish. There are tons of garfish in the river. If you go back, I did a video when the water was really clear up near a seawall. I mean, there were dozens of garfish just sunning themselves in the sun underneath this dock or around this dock. And the garfish garfish do the same thing tarpon do. They suck air, just like tarpon do. I don't know how much you know about tarpon.
I didn't know that.
Tarpon breathe air.
I did not know that.
Okay, so they have gills, but they breathe air as well. So they come up and gulp air. One of the reasons tarpon can live in pretty much stagnant water, like they do in South Florida and some of the canals and stuff, is because they can breathe air. Garfish do the same thing. They're both very prehistoric fish that survived whatever happened to the earth millions of years ago. So they gulp air. So that's what you see when they come up. You actually see, and their mouth is shaped, so their mouth comes up, and the top of their mouth is kind of up here, so they can come up and they can actually suck that air, come and make that roll. And you'll sometimes see the silver, like you see in the video last night. You'll see the silver or the black back, and the black triangular dorsal fin, and a black triangular tail fin. Those are two key factors to see in a tarpon. Garfish, when they roll, number one, they're brown. They're not black, brown or green. They don't have a dorsal fin at all. And if their tail fin breaks the water, it's rounded.
Interesting.
Their tail fin's rounded. And the other thing about garfish is when they come out of the water, they have the really long snout. You'll actually see a lot of times if you catch them right when they come out of the water, their snout will come out of the water. And it makes like it makes a ripple in the water, just like your on-off switch symbol here. A circle with a line. That's exactly what the ripple looks like. It looks like a line with a circle around it. That's what the ripple looks like. That's a garfish. If you're close enough to see that.
Yeah, you got
in calm water.
That's great.
So there's a ton of garfish out there, and you'll see some of my videos. I've caught pretty big garfish live, and that's the other problem with using live bait. You got garfish in the St. Johns River. You got garfish in St. Augustine. You got sharks. And sharks will.
You don't want to catch.
I went out, tried to fish.
Will the sharks eat the artificials? No.
Yes,
not.
I have.
Really?
I did catch one shark on an artificial one time. It was a Yuzuri type dive bait. So yeah, I went out 2 years ago. If you go back a couple of years in my videos, kingfishing. I went out and tried to fish for kingfish like they do here with pogies behind the boat, and what they call bump trolling, or I use my trolling motor, but they call it bump trolling, which you bump your motor in the gear and neutral, into gear, neutral, into gear, and you're going maybe a mile and a half an hour, or something like that. And you're dragging some pogies behind the boat on the wire leader with a stinger treble hook stuck near the tail of the pogie. And these are big pogies. They're like 5-6 inches. And so one of the problems I have is I have not a very big live well. So if I put a dozen pogies in there, they die pretty quick. And I even have a recirculator in there, which will keep them alive for a little bit, but they don't live long. So I kind of lost count after 12 sharks. And you're using steel leaders, so you can't, they don't break off, right? Which is aggravating as hell. So next time I went out, I trolled Yozuris, the big 6-inch crystal mineral Yozuris. The one that works the best is the silver with the blue back, or one that looks like a little mackerel. Those seem to work the best. Over in Pensacola and stuff, they use a pink one. I tried the pink one, didn't have any luck. But in any case, dragging those pretty fast, about 4 miles an hour, 4 to 5 miles an hour.
Wow. Yeah, to get to swim. That's pretty fast.
And I tried one with a dive plane didn't really get anything on that. So I don't use a dive plane anymore. I just use the big lip ones and just let them drag on their own. So 4 to 5 miles an hour. And where I had the best luck is I had some mullet or some sort of frozen bait I had. And on my GPS, right in front of Alano Beach there, about 24 feet of water. And I cut up, and I learned this from a guy, real hazardous fishing guy, who does a lot of offshore stuff. Cutting up the chum in little pieces and throwing it out like breadcrumbs on a trail.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, just one.
Instead of just throwing it all
Instead of throwing it out, just one at a time, because you don't want the fish to stay in there. You want them to follow you.
Interesting.
So I tracked it on my GPS all the way out, maybe about 3 miles I did that. And then I turned around and I came back the same track. And sure enough, boom.
Wow.
I got a 15-pounder, my first kingfish. And then the second time I did it, another day, did the same thing, went back, came back and tracked. And I can only go out when it's reasonably calm. And I went back, came back and tracked that same track where I had dropped a bunch of little pieces of, chum bait, cut bait, and 30-pound kingfish.
Wow.
So that's the only 2 kingfish I've caught, but on artificial. And the name of the video is No Pogies, No Sharks, Yozuri.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because I didn't have to deal with the sharks. There is just I don't know what the issue is with. I know they're trying to save sharks. I get all that. I'm a conservationist, and any fisherman will tell you, live bait off the coast or even in the intercoastal waterway the sharks are crazy.
Yeah.
The sharks are crazy. There's just so many of them.
100%. That's awesome. Well, Jeff, coming up on time, about
that's great.
Hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, that's awesome.
My little presents for you, and again, these live targets work great too. They get tore up pretty, and if you go back in one of my first tarpon videos under a dock there in St. Johns River, that's what I was using.
Yeah.
I was using these swim baits.
I'll definitely try them.
Hooked up 3 little tarpon underneath that dock right away.
Definitely got to go out there. I'm looking forward to fishing with you for sure, learning some of the real tips.
Let's do it next week.
Yeah,
we'll
definitely.
Next week I can come up here. We can meet at the boat ramp and go out over in Mill Cove and see what we can find.
Yeah, 100%. And where can people find you, or what's the name of your YouTube channel for everybody out there?
With YouTube now, all you have to do is type in Jeff Battlefish, all one word, Jeff Battlefish, and that's where you find my YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah, as you guys can hear, we got lots of construction going on. I promised them we'd only be an hour, so we'll roll it up. Jeff, I really appreciate you coming out, man. It's been awesome. And hey guys, thanks for watching. I apologize for the abrupt end of that podcast. I got a lot of construction going on in my house, and I told the construction workers, man, we only got to record about an hour. It was like right after that, they had work to do. So right at the very end, they hit the side of the wall with one of those drill hammers or something. So it got really loud, so we had to cut it off. But thanks for watching, guys. Find Jeff on Battlefish on YouTube. He's got a really cool channel. He's got a wealth of knowledge. You can find us, Submission Fishing Company, submissionfishing.com. If you want to buy some of our lures, you can get them at a local tackle store. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Oos.